Today's interview is with Dr. Jamil Sayegh. It's one of my favorite interviews so far. It's a phenomenal interview. I enjoyed every second of it. We talked so much about mindset stuff and about, stuff that you can do, stuff you can work on, just being the best version of yourself. So I don't know if you can tell from my smile, I enjoyed every second of it. It was really, really cool to me. I love this stuff. We didn't really talk about real estate at all. But I think it's stuff that everybody needs to listen, because mindset stuff affects every aspect of our life, whether you're real estate investing or not. So as always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel, the WWRE podcast. Please give me a 5-star rating and write me a great review. I know this one deserves it. And if you're interested in speaking to me about anything real estate related, I love to talk about real estate related, even though today was a mindset episode. I love to talk about anything real estate related. So if you want to set up a 30-minute call with me, there's going to be a link in the description below, or you can go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there. So I'd love to get to know more about you, maybe help you if I could. I just love to talk to people who are interested in real estate. So enjoy today's fantastic episode with Dr. Jamil Sayegh. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler, and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we have Jamil with us. Hey, Jamil, actually Dr. Jamil with us today. How are you doing?
Doing wonderful. Great to be with you all today. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I'm excited to dive into today's conversation. But before that, I like to ask my guests some fun four questions. So let's just dive into that. What's your favorite color?
Favorite color, blue.
Blue. What animal would you be?
So years ago, I saw this video. Someone put a GoPro on a bald eagle and it was flying through like a forest. And I thought, how badass is that to be able to fly like that? So I'm going to go with an eagle.
That is cool. And that's actually made me rethink my thought. My thought was always like a lion or a tiger or something like that. But actually, an eagle is way cooler, or a hawk or something like that. Way cooler. Favorite meal?
So there's this simple but delicious meal that I make from time to time, which is essentially, it's wild Alaskan sockeye salmon with a large avocado, garlic and salt sprinkled on the avocado, salmon seasoned to perfection, and then some steamed broccoli, also seasoned, and then 3 different color sweet potatoes. That meal is so freaking amazing, and it feels so good going in, and it makes me feel amazing to eat it.
Sounds delicious and also extremely healthy. How do you make 3 different colors of potato?
It's kind of like a combination of sweet potatoes, yams. They have like orange and purple and like a grayish. And,
yeah. Okay, very cool, very cool. What would if you had to pick a superpower, what would it be?
One that always struck me as interesting that I found was pretty fun. Imagine you could be able to put your hand on a book and instantly know everything in it. And then you take both your hands out and you just run through like Barnes & Noble. And then you touch them all.
Wow, that would be incredible. That's kind of like the Matrix, right? When he's able to download that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow.
Something like that always resonated.
Cool. Well, thank you for having a bit of fun at the start of the show with that. Now, with that being said, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and what your current focus is?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to. Thanks again for having me, and for everyone who's listening. Happy to be here with you all. So as Barry said, I'm Dr. Jamil Sayegh. I'm a life, business, and relationship coach, and I'm also a licensed naturopathic physician. And I work with leaders and high performers from around the world to create an extraordinary life without regret. That has been my biggest passion, my mission, and we can get into a little bit about where that all came from. But ultimately, they come to me with their biggest goals and dreams and challenges around their business, their mindset, their relationships, their happiness, their health, their spirituality. It really is the full spectrum of the human experience. And we dive deep in conversation, and I help you see your world differently. And when you see your world differently, you start showing up as the most powerful version of you. I call that the real you. And when that version of you really comes out to play, the results you're getting just go through the roof, and life changes in a really beautiful way. And so that's a little bit about how I like to show up in the world and serve people.
Wow, that's Amazing. I'm already excited. I had like a bit of goosebumps listening to that. Honestly, that's so cool to me. I love this stuff. I think it's fascinating. And I just even the simplicity of it, like being the best version of yourself is just amazing to me, right? And a life with no regrets is just, that's incredible. That really speaks to me. But you know, before we kind of dive into more of that, the nuts and bolts kind of it, how did you end up in that? How did you decide that this was a career path to you, right? Is it something that just spoke to you, something that you strategically went after? How did you end up in that?
Yeah, I'd love to share that. So kind of the short version of the story, take a few minutes, but the short version is, so I was 14 years old. I got into track and field. I was a runner, never ran like intentionally before that in my life. And I noticed that my track times were pretty abysmal. I didn't feel good. I was getting sick all the time. And something intuitively felt like maybe it's what I eat. Maybe it's my diet. And looking back now, I had the worst diet of anyone I've ever eaten. So don't let the my favorite meal fool you. that was a long time ago. But I had the worst diet I can imagine. And I went online, I did some research, some reading, and I figured out, wow, there's a lot of things I seem to be doing wrong here. And made some changes overnight. Some changes took a little bit longer, but I started feeling so much better. Energy came back. I was sleeping better. I was running so much faster. And I thought, wow, I'm onto something. And you know, my father was a family practice physician, and a lot of my uncles and cousins were as well. And so I grew up with a medical family, and being a doctor was something that was always on my mind. And now here I was learning about nutrition, holistic medicine. It was very exciting for me, and I was getting personal results with it. Then all of a sudden, family, friends, some of my physician family members would be asking me, so, you know, what's been going on? What are you learning? And I would tell them exactly like the biochem and what I'm studying. I was really geeking out about it. And they would start applying it, let's say to themselves or to their patients, and they were getting better. And I sat there, I was 14. I sat there thinking, not only am I learning this and it's feeling great for me, but these people are getting results for their patients. And they're like 40, 50 years old, head of the hospitals. And they're like taking my advice. And I'm sitting there going, wow, that's exciting. And so I started looking into I dove into health, and I continued that to this day. I'm 30 currently, so it was 16 years ago. But I also, around 15, started thinking, what are the other areas of a really fulfilling life? And relationships came up in my mind. So I went out just with the same zest that I wanted to study health. And I studied under some of the top marriage therapists, dating coaches in the world, bought their books, their DVD courses, all that stuff, and trained under that, and learned what's that difference that makes the difference? How can people communicate effectively? How can you re-spark the passion in a relationship? How are some people 90 and they got married when they were 17 and they're so in love, and other people, the relationship falls apart early on? Like, what's that difference? And so in the same way with health, people started coming to me and saying, hey, you know, my wife, my husband, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, we're having some issues. Can you help us? And I was mediating relationships, and I was 15, and I was helping preventing divorces and all this stuff. And it was so exciting for me. And that same thing, that same process continued in business, in mindset work. I got into neuro-linguistic programming, psychology, the work of Tony Robbins and people like that. And it was just learning as much as I possibly could about how to help people get from where they are to where they want to be in these key areas of life. And that continued until I was 19. And then this is kind of where a big aspect of why I do what I do comes in. When I was 19, my father had a brain aneurysm. And for anyone who doesn't know what that is, imagine a blood vessel in your brain, think of it like a tube, starts to balloon outward, and then it pops. Now, if you're fortunate, it doesn't pop, you have a really bad headache, you get it clipped, and you're good to go. But my father's popped, and he was in a 4-hour brain surgery. And according to the surgeon, not only it was the worst aneurysm he'd ever seen, but he came as close to dying as you could go. And if he survived, they said he would have been in a coma, and he likely wouldn't have woken up. He survived the surgery, and 4 hours later, I walked into the room. He's in a coma, tubes everywhere. It looked like a train hit him. And my father was, for me, like the epitome of what it meant for me to be a man. You know, I loved him so much, but it also, he had such a life and he radiated enthusiasm. And for me, can you hear that, by the way? There's like a lawnmower. It's perfect. Okay.
No.
Yeah, I hear it loud, so I want to make sure it's good. There was two things I really felt in that moment when I walked into that room. One was there was this kind of helpless feeling because I wanted to do something to help him, and I feel like I couldn't. And the second was this intense feeling of regret because I was 19, he was 49, and there was this feeling that I had taken my relationship with him for granted. there was this feeling that I didn't have the type of bond, the type of connection that I could have. I didn't know him the way that his brothers, my cousins, my uncles would always talk about how amazing he was. And and now it felt like I missed out on that opportunity because I'm being told he could die at any minute. And that to me was really devastating. And then fast forwarding 3 years, he survived another 3 years before he passed away. He came out of a coma a few months later. And in those 3 years, we helped him make almost a full recovery. And the thing, which was, he was the miracle child of the hospital. You know, everyone had the biggest smiles on their faces whenever they saw him. But the thing was, in those 3 years, I learned so much about myself and about life and about death. And I experienced, you know, my highest highs and my lowest lows. There were so many moments where he almost passed away in my arms. And I really feel like I got tested in many ways. And in those 3 years and after, I have met so many people, young and old and every age in between, that either were older and they were telling me with such regret about the life that they had lived because they weren't happy and they weren't fulfilled and they felt like they wasted their life because they did what other people wanted them to do versus what their heart was calling them toward. Or people who were younger and the mindset was, well, I don't know what I want to do, but all these people want me to do this, so I'm going to do that. So I already saw that I knew people that were already doing that. I knew that was going to be usually leading to disaster. And then people in the middle who would say, well, I've already been doing what I've been doing for such a long period of time, might as well stick with it for another 20 or 30 years. But they were really unhappy. And so after my dad passed away, I remember being in the wake and over 7,000 people came to the 5-hour wake. And I shook every single one of their hands and almost all of them said, your dad saved my life. And I felt not only humbled, he was 53 when he passed away, but I also felt this feeling that I'd been playing small, that I was afraid of rejection, that I cared way too much about what other people thought about me. And I was not shining my light. We all have this light inside of us, metaphorically, that I like to call it. And when you shine that light, that's you being your true self. That's you radiating your gifts to the world that you're here to bring. And I wasn't doing that because I was coming from fear. And in that moment, for me, that was that light switch moment of, just never again. The light turned on. And that was when I was 21, 22. I'm 30 currently. So ever since then, it really was full steam ahead. A whole different version of me came out to play. And, after that, I stayed home for a year or so to be with my family, moved to Arizona for 5 years, went to medical school, finished that, got my license. And I'd been coaching. I didn't even know what that word was when I was 14, but I'd been helping people with their health, with their relationships, with their mindset ever since I was 14. And I made it a professional calling a couple of years ago. And it's truly been an incredible experience up until this point, and predominantly focusing on the life, business, and relationship coaching and incorporating the health when appropriate. I find most of my clients, let's say, are business owners, entrepreneurs, and they might tell me, I want help in my business, I want help in my relationship, I'm not happy. But what's going on behind the scenes, usually, I don't have the energy. I gained a lot of weight. I'm feeling tired all the time. I've got brain fog, and that's usually related to their diet, their nutrition, their lifestyle, all that kind of stuff. So I incorporate it as much as I can to give them that holistic experience.
Very cool, very cool. Well, firstly, thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure, you've shared it more than once, but I'm sure it's never easy to talk about your dad's passing and that tough time that you went through. So I appreciate you sharing that with us, because I'm sure that definitely isn't easy for you to share that. So thank you very much for doing that. But I think it's really interesting because of your approach, right? I think for a lot of times there's a certain, if we're talking about a performance coach or we're talking about a life coach or whatever, it's not that often that they focus on all aspects of your life, right? Because it's usually not one thing like that's stopping you from doing something, right? It's not just as easy as a quick fix, like let me just fix that one point and everything else is going to sort itself out. I think it's in my experience anyway, I feel like it's a complete low. If I'm eating badly, if I'm not going to the gym, if I'm not sleeping right, if I'm not being productive, if I'm not not being nice to my wife or whatever, not do you know what I mean? That it's all a kind of a circle, and it's not usually I can just do one thing, right? It's, you need to be eating better, you need to be exercising, and it's all those things. And I think it's so great and refreshing to hear that you focus on all those aspects of someone's life, because it's needed, right? It's not just like you can focus on one aspect of your life and that's okay, great, that aspect of my life is great and everything else is fine. Well, it's usually not the case, right? And I think it's really cool to hear you talk about that.
Thank you. It's interesting too, because I would say big picture, there is one thing that is at the core of every one of those, let's say, facets of my work, which is why I'm able to combine them. Not only has there been a significant amount of training and self-study and life experience backing up each of those areas, but the thing is, whether it's your business, whether it's your relationship, whether it's your health, whether it's anything, it all comes down to you. It all comes down to how are you showing up in the world? It all comes down to what version of you are you bringing to the table? Are you operating at like a 3 out of 10 in terms of what you're capable of being? Because there's an expression, how we do one thing is how we do everything. And that, in my mind, comes from this idea that if you're operating habitually with conditioned patterns, the person who's got the really messy office space probably doesn't have the cleanest car in the world, right? And then their bedroom is probably similar because they carry themselves in a certain light and they hold a certain standard for themselves, right? So in the same way, most people in my experience before they come to work with me, if they're really being honest with themselves, they are not living a life in alignment with commitment, integrity, the best of who they are. The person, I tell people all the time, the person who we break our word to the most is ourselves. And so when people aren't showing up as they could be, then they're doing that usually across the board. And so when I'm working with somebody, on their business, the biggest bottleneck to a business is the business owner usually. And it's like a business can only grow to the extent that its owner does. And so a business owner might come to me saying, yeah, I want help growing my business. Well, yeah, I know certain strategies and things I can help them with that. But the core of it is I need to help them become a better them. Because if they do that, they know how to grow their business. They don't need me for that. But what they need is they need help getting out of their own way. What they need is learning how to really drop out of fear and come from the best of who they are. Because when they do that, they make better decisions, they show up more powerfully, and things just work. And so that is kind of that unifying principle that goes throughout all of those areas of life.
That's so cool. I think that's what you said there about the business owner is not, they want to grow their business, right? And they focused on their business, right? But it's not necessarily, most times it's probably not their business. Like you said, they know how to grow their business, but it's themselves getting in their way, right? Whatever that is, whatever that's stopping them. I think you can apply that to us in life, right? It's whatever we want to achieve, we focus on what we want to achieve, but it's maybe not that thing that we need to work on. Maybe it's ourselves to get to that thing, right? It's like, for example, real estate investing, right? That's what we focus on here, is that the way to do real estate investing, whatever niche or style of real estate investing you want to adapt and be successful in, it's out there. The information is on the internet, right? It's everywhere, absolutely everywhere. YouTube, Google, where podcasts, books, it's out there. You can find that information, right? But it's us that gets in our own way, right? It's whatever limiting beliefs, it's fear, all those things, right, that get into the way. And if we can eliminate those, I really feel like that's what's going to make us successful more than, yes, listen to seminars, go to seminars, listen to webinars, do all that, learn as much as you can, but also don't negate who you are as a person and what you could be doing to sabotage yourself, right? And unintentionally or intentionally, whatever it is. I think that's really interesting. I think that's such a fascinating topic to me. What you talked about fear there.
Can I add something before we jump into that?
Yeah, of course, please, absolutely, yeah, please do.
Just before fear, there's something you said that I wanted to, add on to. So people will say, focus on what you want, and I agree with that. That's true. Keep your focus, eyes on the prize, as they talk about. Now the thing is, what you want is only step one. So once you identify what you want, the next question, which is equally, if not more important, who do I need to be in order to get that? What version of me needs to show up? Because the truth of the matter is you don't have what you say you want because you're not being the version of you that's capable of creating it. That is the only reason, ever. There's no exception to that. And so people will say, like, what's the difference between you now and you when you get that goal? It's still you. Now, yeah, there might be certain things you learn, but how many people read books and go to seminars and buy all the tapes and their life doesn't change at all? It's not just because they don't act on it. It's because they still show up as that old version of them. If you want your life to change, something needs to die. And that thing that needs to die is the old version of you. It's the limited thinking. It's the old story. It's the belief. It's the, this is who I think that I am. That is not going to serve you going forward if you want to play at a bigger level. And so once you're clear on what I want, who do I need to be right now? Who do I need to be right now to make that happen? And once I'm crystal clear on who I need to be and I be that, those results are inevitable.
That's incredible. You're speaking so much to me right now, because it's so true what you're saying. It's like, so we have a goal, right? Whatever it is, to be at 100 units, own 10 single family homes, whatever it is, right? Whatever it is personal to you. But unless you're ready to be that person that can do that, right? There's a certain type of person. If you sleep all day and you're eating junk food and you're unmotivated and you don't feel good about yourselves, what are the chances that you're going to do whatever it takes to get to 100 units? It's probably not high, right? And I'm just naming some stuff there. It could be whatever those things. But you need to become the person that owns 100 units, right? And there's 1,000 different people that own it. It's not a certain type of person, but they have certain traits, right? They're usually going to be hardworking, determined, not take no for an answer. The list can go on and on and on, but you need to become a certain person to be that. And I'm not saying you need to change completely, and people get scared of change, I think, so you got to be careful with that. But I think you need to become, like you said, I guess the best version of yourself, right? You need to drop some weights that you're carrying around with you. I'm a weightlifter, so that makes sense to me. Drop those weights and put on the positive weights that's going to make you stronger. Take the stuff that's dragging you down away and pick up the stuff that's going to make you stronger and be a better version of yourself and be that person that can own 100 units. Man, that speaks to me so much. It's incredible.
If you think of it, I love that. Thank you. I'm glad that spoke to you. And if you think of it like a snake, kind of, or a butterfly, whatever metaphor you like, but let's say a snake has old skin, and then it sheds the old skin. And now it's like the newest version of the snake, right? In the same way, that best version of you is an ideal that we never reach. And that's wonderful, because mastery is a never-ending process. Like, you never get there, but it's fun to do it. And as you go up that process, you expand. And as you expand, you become more capable of doing these things that you want to do and making a bigger impact in the world. And so the person who has 10 units, if they want 100, in the same way that the person who might be making 6 figures, if they want to be making 7 figures, it's a whole different personality. It's a whole different way of approaching it. You can't operate the same as 6 figures and that just gets you to 7. It doesn't work that way. In the same way, if you want 100 units and you've got 10, or if you want 1,000 and you've got 100, if you keep doing exactly what you're doing now, you're probably going to keep around the same place. Like, we need to step up and think, what would that version of me do? Like, how would that version of me carry myself? How would that version of me talk to other people? How would that version of me show up in my business? It isn't the same. And when we can step up and believe ourselves to be that version, it's not fake it till you make it. It's more be it until you experience it.
Yeah, so true. And it's making me want to ask better questions of myself. Who do I need to be to get to that goals, right? Yes, you can ask yourself, what do I need to do? So that's the mechanics of, you to find one deal, you need to look at 100 and put an offer on 10 to get, the chance on 3 and you get 1, right? So I'm just using as an example, right? That's the mechanics of doing it. But who do I need to be to analyze 100 deals, to get down to 10, who do I need to be you know what I mean? If I'm not doing it now and I'm not achieving that, who do I need to be? And that's such an interesting question. That's such a fascinating way and great way to look at it, right? Because I think we're all guilty of having our goals, and yes, great goals, fantastic, right? 100 units, 10 single family, whatever it is, 100 flips a year, whatever it is. And we really focus, and we're told over and over again, have goals, great, fantastic, because you need a roadmap to where you're going. But like you pointed out there, it's so important to figure out who you need to be to get there, and how do you become that person. And I think that's brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I'm sure maybe you've told it 100 times, but that speaks so much to me, and hopefully it speaks to a lot of people as well. What are some of the things that you see that do get in people's way, that stop them from being that best version of yourself? Because I'm sure there's probably a lot of, everyone's different for sure, but I'm sure there's a lot of same patterns that you see that stop people.
Yeah, and so I feel like this ties into the last point we were making, and so I can answer both of them kind of. This idea that one of the number one, if you want to call it a mistake, that I think people make is most people create their future from the past. And what I mean by that is they look to their past towards what has occurred thus far, how I've been showing up, how people treat me, the kind of success that I have achieved, or in their mind, lack thereof, whatever the case may be. And then they look to the future and they make this assumption that the future is going to be a lot like the past. And so because they do that, they don't change how they're showing up. They don't change who they're being. They keep being who they've been. But what that does, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because you say the future is going to be a lot like the past, but you act like the old you. So of course the future is going to be like the past. And then life doesn't change that much. Versus if you were to create the future from the future, which means you close your eyes and you visualize, what's that life I want to live? What is the version of me? And how would he or she show up in the world? How would they act? How would they do all these things? In the real estate example you said, like if I want to analyze 100 deals, how would that version of me sleep, time manage, prioritize, like treat people? How would they do this? And then you get really clear, and then you come back to this moment when you open your eyes, and now you just start being that person now for no reason other than you choose to. And so from that place, the past becomes irrelevant. It does not matter who you've been up until this point, because you recreate yourself in this moment. And from this place, you build. And so that number one mistake I find most people do is they don't own the fact that they're a creator. They don't recognize the fact that every moment is a second chance, if you want to call it that. Every moment, if you don't like it, you can do something about it. Every moment, you can completely reinvent yourself. Are you doing that? Or have you been living out the same story for 40 years and saying like, life sucks? Because that's got nothing to do with life. That's you. And people don't like taking, in general, I'm painting a broad brush here, but oftentimes people don't like, or rather their ego doesn't necessarily like to take that responsibility. And when I say responsibility, it's got nothing to do with blame. A lot of people take that on, like it's not that it's your fault or blame. It's just saying that life is the way that it is right now. And if you don't like it, there are things you can do to alter it in your experience, whether it be the way you're thinking about it, your internal experience of it, or actual actions you can take to improve the situation. But if you're not doing anything about it, you're free to complain or do whatever you want. But if you do that, there's consequences to that. And then life won't be as amazing as it could be in your experience.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love this. I absolutely love this. Because I came to the realization not long ago, and it's amazing that it took me this long, but I think some people never come to the realization is that you can have whatever life you choose, right? Like, I know it sounds so simplistic, but it's so, so true. You can have whatever life you choose. To the most part, right? Some people obviously are dealt a bad hand, and there's certain things that but for the absolute most part, you can choose whatever life you want to, however you want your life to be, right? You want it to be this most amazing, fun-filled, happy, joyous, successful life, or you can have this life that's not so good, right? Whatever that looks like as well. But you have that choice. And truthfully, I didn't really realize this as much until recently, until maybe, the good thing about being in real estate investing, not financially as well, but also it challenges you to be a better version of yourself, as we talked about, right? Because the mindset thing is so important, and it comes apparent the more you're in the real estate field and talk to successful people. It's very apparent that mindset is important. But until recently, I didn't realize this, and that I have the power to create whatever life I want for myself, right? Whatever that looks like, whatever my dream life looks like, within reason, like I can have it, right? I'm not going to travel to Mars probably, or maybe who knows, right? But definitely not to Pluto, right? But there's certain things like, I can create the life that I want, right? What do I want my life to look like? And I can create that. That's within me. That's within everyone. Every person listening to this, that's within all of us. And I think that's so amazing to sort of figure out and realize. And I think so many people don't realize that. I think we're bogged down by everything day in, day out, and maybe we're not surrounded by people that understand these kind of concepts, or they're able to speak to people like you. But I think that realization of that you are in absolute control of your life and your thoughts and everything around it is just unbelievable to me. It's just so, so powerful.
Can I share a story that I think really captures that?
Please, yes, absolutely.
It's a story about Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's two parts of it, and I want to share both of them. I think they're both relevant. So first one is, I remember hearing, so when he was a kid, his mom was really worried, And this is like when he's probably a teenager. And his mom goes to the doctor and says, I think there's something wrong with Arnold. And the doctor says, why? What's going on? And she says, all of his friends, this is like, Austria, and he's like 13 or 16 or something like that. And she says, all of his friends have pictures of half naked women on their walls. But he had all of these like really muscular guys on his wall. And she didn't know he wanted to be a bodybuilder. And so that was his dream, right? And so he wanted to be Mr. Olympia. Now, as he started getting into it, first he had to become Mr. Austria. Prior to even winning that, he's in the gym and he's working out with all of these bodybuilders. It's like a special gym just for bodybuilders, the heaviest weights, all the machines and everything. And they're in there for hours and hours. And so it's like 4 hours go by and all of them basically finish their workout and they're all leaving. Arnold's still there working out. And they say, hey, Arnold, we're all done. Let's go. And Arnold says, no, Mr. Olympia works out for 8 hours. Yeah. And he hadn't won Mr. Austria yet, but because he already identified as Mr. Olympia, because he already knew, this is connecting all the dots to what we just said, he already had in his mind what he wants. But now it's, who do I need to be, right? And so he's already being he's eating like Mr. Olympia, he's sleeping like Mr. Olympia, he's working out like Mr. Olympia, and he's working out like 6 or 8 hours a day. And so he's doing these insane workouts. And then, he starts winning and he has all these wonderful successes. And then the second story was from a mentor of mine where essentially this mentor was a journalist and Arnold had just made his first movie in the US and it was a big flop and it didn't go well and he was getting interviewed. And so the mentor basically said to him in his mind, knowing that the movie was basically crap, his acting career is over. So it's like, what's next? That was the question essentially. And Arnold goes, oh, I'm going to be, the #1 box office star in Hollywood. And the guy's mindset was, how could that be possible? You have an accent, we can barely understand you. Your movie was horrible and like nobody liked it. How are you going to do that? And he basically said, oh, I'm going to do it the same way I did it in bodybuilding. And he talked about that same formula that we just talked about. And people would interview him for that same movie that was a big flop and no one knew who he was. And he would say, do you want my autograph? And they would say, who are you? He's like, I'm Arnold. But he carried himself in this way that kind of like, I'm a big deal. I'm already the #1 action hero. I already am Mr. Olympia. I'm already all these things. And he was living into it. Now, is there a guarantee that if you do that, you're going to get everything you want? No. But is there a guarantee that if you do that, you have a much higher chance of getting it? Yes. And the reason is because you don't get in your own way. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, it's fear that's holding us back. It's self-sabotage, these limiting stories of maybe I'm not good enough and who am I to do this? All that goes out the window when you start showing up as that really actualized best version of you. And so we all have in our capacity this ability to step into the best of who we are, embody it as the best that we know to be. And as we know better, we'll do better. But be that best version of you now. Act as if you've already done it. It's like when you public speak the first time, you might be terrified. When you've done it 1,000 times, it feels really easy. But the only difference is you're convincing yourself that it's scary, people are going to judge me. The first time I public spoke, I was in front of 200 or 300 people. And I remember the night before, I had my whole thing kind of memorized. I knew what I wanted to say. I had rehearsed it 1,000,000 times. I had it cold. And I looked at my couch, this IKEA futon, and I closed my eyes and I said, all right, when I open my eyes, I'm going to see like 200-300 people in my room staring at me. And then I opened my eyes, there they were. And then I started my speech. And within like 5 seconds, I messed up. My heart's pounding. My hands are sweaty. 5 minutes before, I said that with no problem. Well, what just happened? Because no one's in the room but me. What happened is I got in my own way. I made it about me, about I hope I don't mess up. I hope I say the right things. I hope they don't judge me, versus these imaginary people that represented who they were going to be tomorrow, right? And I just continued to rehearse it in that same way, but I had fun with it. And I was like talking to the couch and I was pointing at people. And then the next day I went in there, absolutely crushed it. And all these people walked up to me saying like, wow, like how often do you speak? Because that was incredible. Like, I'd love to learn from you. And I said, that was the first time I've ever spoken in my life. But the thing is, when I walked in, my brain, that mental rehearsal, which is what all the top performers in the world do, this mental rehearsal, your brain doesn't know the difference between what you've actually experienced and what you imagine. If you can go through it mentally over and over and over again, see it going perfectly, when you actually do it, your brain feels like it's done it before. You're going to have an easier time with it.
That's cool. That's a really cool story. And I think you touched on something there that's so huge and so important. I think that, you know, for me, it's one of the most important things is that self-talk, right? I'm sure you probably work on that a lot, and something that I've become, you know, over the last few years really aware of, and I still fight it to this day. But that self-talk is just so critical, right? We talk to ourselves more than we talk to anyone else, right? By far, not even close, right? We talk to ourselves all day long, whatever we tell ourselves. Maybe talk a little bit about self-talk and kind of what you see from that perspective as well.
Yeah, something interesting with self-talk. Most of us, if you were to speak to yourself the way you spoke to, let's say, a little child who was crying, you'd be a lot kinder to yourself. But that's the same thing that's going on. You know, I think of adults and children in this sense. All adults are just big kids, but kids are not little adults. Yeah. So we all have this kind of inner child, and usually there's trauma that happens. Sometimes it's perceived trauma, because all trauma is perceived, but sometimes it's really big stuff, and, you know, relatively there's, like, you know, abuse, or there's divorce and things of that nature, or there's death. But sometimes it's really minor, but, like, it's big for the individual. You know, you put yourself out there in the lunchroom and you got laughed at, and all of a sudden now you internalize, nobody cares what I have to say, and this happens and this happens. That's a form of trauma too. So from this self-talk perspective, most of us are very mean to ourselves. And there's this inner child within you that is basically wounded. And so something happens now and you beat yourself up for it. But that version of you that's being, like, hypercritical, it's like the 6-year-old or the 12-year-old in you that basically stopped developing emotionally and isn't healed. And, you know, if you were to speak to yourself as if you were your best friend, if you were to speak to yourself as if you were a little child going through a rough time, you would have such a different experience of your self-talk. But when we treat ourselves like we're, like, our enemy, you know, there's so much pain that gets inflicted there, and it's self-inflicted. You know, I think we're definitely way too critical of ourselves, and we hold ourselves to almost an impossible standard. You know, a lot of people hold themselves to this standard of perfection, and they identify as a perfectionist. But perfection doesn't exist in the way that society, you know, coins it. And so from that place, it's not the highest standard, it's the lowest standard, because it's not real. And people who identify as perfectionists, they're really acting out of fear. Oh, I won't publish this yet because it's not ready. But it's never going to be ready, because you're going to nitpick the shit out of it. And so it's never going to be ready. You're never going to put yourself out there because it's never good enough, right? And so we hold ourselves back. You know, most people think other people are thinking about them way more than they actually are. Most people are thinking about themselves almost all the time. They're more worried about what you think about them. They're not thinking about what they think about you most of the time. But we all think, because each of us is like the star in our own movie. Each of us is the center of our own universe. So from our perspective, it's like, oh my God, you know, my shirt's got a small little stain on it, or I got this pimple over there. Everyone's going to notice, but they're looking at their pimple and they're worried that you're going to see it. And so when we come from this place of thinking only about ourselves, we suffer. But when we come from this place of, let me just be kind to others, but let me also be kind to myself, and know that, all right, maybe I didn't do as good of a job as I was capable. Let me do better now. Let me do better next time. Maybe I didn't show up as powerfully. I can do it better now. You know, like, it just, that self-talk is definitely crucial. Does that make sense? Like all that?
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And I was laughing, but it's not that it was funny, is because it's so true when you say about, you're so worried about what other people think about you, but they're more worried about what other people think about them, right? And I can even make that more specific. I remember going to the gym with one of my friends one time, and they were like, oh my God, everyone's looking at me. Everyone thinks I'm doing this wrong. I'm doing this exercise wrong, right? And I know firsthand, right, in the gym, people are more worried about what they're doing. They don't, you know, they might care what you do, but to some extent they're more worried about working out. They have their goals they want to achieve. They think they look overweight themselves, or they're too skinny, or they don't like what they're wearing. Their hair is wrong. And am I doing this exercise right? Am I working out hard enough? Oh, that person looks better. You know, this is the things that everyone else is thinking. So and I think that's true for life as well. You know, obviously spending a lot of time in the gym, I kind of know that, and I've felt that and understand that. But I think it's the same in life. We spend so much time worrying what other people think, where most likely those people, they might even admire what you're doing, right? Whatever you're doing, if you're out running and you think you look silly running, most people will be looking at you thinking, wow, that person is running. I should be out running. I wish I was running. You know, I wish I had determination. That person had determination. I wish I had that willpower, right? I think people admire you more than you would expect, I think. And I think that's such a great point. I think it was funny because it's so true. It's so absolutely true. And I think that's so interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
But just we hold ourselves to, again, these like impossible standards when if anyone is listening, 2 words, that's the best advice you're ever going to get. Be you. If you were just to be yourself, people think it sounds cliche, but are you doing it? Most people, I tried that. This is a life process. The thing is, but be yourself. Oh, it can't be that easy. Try it. Like, it's not even try it, do it. Like, actually step into you fully with zero care about what other people think. And not from this like arrogant place, but more from this place of, I care more about me. I care more about what I think of me than what you think of me. And that's from self-love. Because if I care more about what you think about me, which I'm usually assuming, it's not like you're telling it to me. I usually am making the assumption, Barry thinks this about me and this about me. My hair looks like this. Meanwhile, or I'm the runner in that example you gave. You think, wow, he's so dedicated, he's so commitment. You don't even know me. You're just driving by. I should really get back into running. Meanwhile, I see you in the car and I think, oh, wow, he's judging me for this. He's judging me for this. And it's such a different conversation that's going on. If you just showed up as yourself, you lived your life that's in alignment with your heart and what excites your spirit, what sets your soul on fire, and you did that every single day, and you treated others in that same way. You honored them to do the same. You didn't force anyone to do anything because you don't want anything forced on you, that kind of thing. Your life and your experience with other people would be so beautiful. It's just most of us, we have our own expectations of what we think needs to be done based on what other people told us. And then we hold others to that same standard and we get pissed with them, but we're not even living up to it. You know?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and I love the sound of that, but maybe are there some techniques and tricks to that, to just turning up as yourself, right? Because it's one thing to say, just be you, right? Don't focus on anything else, just be you. But if we've had a lifetime of having these worries and these anxieties and these self-talk and this, thoughts about how other people perceive us, just saying turn up to be you, right? It's great. Yeah. And I completely get it, but it's not that easy, I don't think. And I know it would, I'm still working on these things myself, right? Just to be open, but I don't think I'm perfect. Yeah. We're all trying to work on stuff. But how do you turn up and just try and be you and just focus on you and eliminate these negative thoughts that you think that people have about you?
So I'm going to answer this in a couple ways. The first is, as you said, this can be challenging for some people or most people, especially if they've had a lot of things in their past that have happened that have been really programming them and conditioning them. And that's why one aspect of the work that I do with people is helping them to clear these emotional traumas and stuck energy and things that have been building up in their life to keep them basically playing as that small version of who they are, but something that could be useful to people right now. A couple of questions to ask yourself in the moment. There you are, you're starting to get a little bit afraid and you're thinking about doing something that you want to do and you're holding yourself back. Well, the first question sounds simple, but again, these questions are powerful if you actually try them on in the moment. What would I do if I wasn't afraid? That's one thing to think about. Somebody goes, oh, what should I do? I could do this or I could do this. But because they're coming from a place of fear, it's obvious which one they should do based on what they said they want. But they're allowing fear to make it like I could go one way or the other. but what would you do if you weren't afraid? Oh, it'd be obvious. I would do that. All right, then do that, because that's what's gonna, after you do it, you're gonna feel so much better about. And that leads me to the second example, which would be something to the extent of, let's say you're about to go do something and you're afraid. You close your eyes and you visualize it happening. We talked about the mental rehearsal. You visualize it happening. You can do it over and over and over and over again. And you see it happening successfully. Now, one fun little technique or trick that could be useful. Imagine it happening far more difficult. So for example, imagine, I'll give you an example. I heard this from a mentor and I really enjoyed this one. Imagine you're in the pool and you're a swimmer and you want to swim your fastest time, but you don't believe you can. And you believe, I'll probably swim like 5 or 6 seconds below that. It's fine. And I say, well, why don't you just swim your fastest time? And you say, oh, it's not that easy. That's too simple. You clearly don't know what you're talking about. And it's like, well, I want you to visualize a great white shark swimming behind you. And it swims 1 second slower than your best time. And it's not going to get out of the way for you. So every time you're swimming and you're going as fast as you can go and you start to slow down, visualize like the shark's nose hitting your foot. And when you do that enough times, what ends up happening is you get in the water and you start swimming. And the moment you start slowing down, all of a sudden you think about that shark and you get this like adrenaline rush. And now it's like you were getting tired and this energy spikes back up. Or in the same way, visualize, and then you end up swimming your fastest time. But in a different way, take whatever the case is. You're going to give a public talk, and it's likely going to be a room full of people, really civilized. You're just going to go up there, give a talk, and that's it. Maybe answer some questions. But now imagine you walk into the room, and everyone's got like a clipboard, and they got the glasses on their nose, and they're judging you. And then imagine like there's a disco ball, and there's music playing, and you need to keep everyone's attention because they're really getting distracted. And you're making it so difficult in the visualization. And there's like, 4-year-olds running around screaming, and you need to get everyone's attention. And you need to really be that funny and captivating. But in that visualization, you still succeed. And then when you do it that way, you go, wow, like this was insane. That was crazy. I still managed to pull it off though. Then you walk into the actual thing, which is 1,000,000 times easier than what you just visualized successfully doing. And all of a sudden you walk into this room and there's just people sitting there graciously waiting to hear you. There's no disco ball, there's no music, there's no kids screaming. They're not there to judge you. And you go, wow, this was easy. And another thing, make it about other people, not you. When you're afraid, you're focusing on you. If you walk into the room thinking somebody in here really needs to hear what I have to say, and it could be 1 out of 100 people, but if that one person gets one thing that really helps them today, that's why I'm here. But if I focus on me, I hope I don't mess up. I hope they like what I have to say. Now I'm in my head, I'm not in my heart, and I'm disconnected from my audience. And it's not just public speaking, it's anything. If you're afraid, take the focus off of yourself. Who else is going to benefit from you doing whatever it is you're about to do? Maybe your spouse, maybe your kids, maybe your clients, maybe your family, or whatever the case may be. Other people will likely benefit from you stepping up into your heart, into this best version of you. Focus on them. Focus on what it would be like, how they would benefit. When you get that focus off of you, it gets a lot easier to take a step forward. And once you move forward, you get momentum. And most people find that fear of doing something is way worse than actually doing the thing.
Yes. So how many times have we built something up in our heads and then it happens and it's nowhere near as bad, right? It's like the teacher, when the teacher wants to punish you, right, on a Friday, he'll say to you, I'll speak to you Monday, right? So then all weekend, you have that all weekend, oh no, what is this teacher going to do? What's going to happen? But I'm in so much trouble. And then Monday, you spent all weekend worrying about that, right, in your head. And then Monday comes and the teacher says, yeah, don't do that again. Right? And that's all it is, right? Or whatever it is, whatever they say, okay, you need to write this out 100 times or whatever it is. Whatever the punishment is, it's nowhere near as bad as what you create in that head. And I think that's so true as well. That's, I was thinking about that, as we're so guilty of creating this monster in our head of something, whatever it is, right? Whatever you want to achieve or do or whatever, we create this monster in our head about why it's horrible, why it won't happen. Take public speaking, right? Same thing. We create this monster in our head about how it's going to be. Everyone's going to hate it or whatever. And then when you do it, you realize, oh, wow, that wasn't as bad, right? That really wasn't as bad. And I like your example as well of it's almost turning a negative into a positive, right? These people are going to hate me. They're not going to like what I said. I'm going to stumble on my words. But what if you turned around and said, these people are going to love what I said? I have something to offer, right? And you've got to make, that's on you to make sure that you do offer them something of interest or whatever. But, it's that, thinking positive. Yeah, I've got something to offer these people. These people, they actually need to hear what I'm going to say. These people are going to be interested. I have this, and this to say. I'm actually doing them a favor. Like, if you think about it like that, would that not change your approach? Would you not be excited? Like, hey, I get to tell these people this thing today, right? And, you can do the same thing. Like, that's something that I've started doing recently is whatever it is, like say these interviews, sometimes I've got 4 or 5 lined up back to back and I'm tired and I'm not feeling great. But I'm like, wait, I get to talk about real estate or mindset or stuff I really enjoy for 4 or 5 hours a day, right? I get to do that, right? How many people would love to do that? It's the same with something goes wrong in the real estate, right? A toilet breaks or there's a leak or the roof needs fixing or whatever. I get to have those problems. How many people would love to have those problems that I have in real estate? How many people would love to own that real estate just to have those problems, right? Because if you have that problems, it means you're investing in real estate. It means you're bettering your life. It means that you own that property. So, you can always turn that negative into a positive, and it's changes the way you approach everything, right? I get to have these problems. It's great. I love it when the property manager calls me and there's a problem. Like, okay, cool. I'm in real estate investing. This is what I signed up for. This is what I want to be. This is exactly what I need to be doing. And I love that you talk about that.
Will, thank you. With the excitement that you mentioned in terms of being excited or feeling excited and feeling anxious, it's essentially the same experience, but you put a different interpretation on it. Yeah. So in the public speaking example, if I'm about to go walk into a room and my story that I tell myself is, oh, I'm terrified because here's a room full of people that are so much better than me and they're going to judge me harshly. And maybe, who am I to talk up there? Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about. Already now I am shifting essentially my brain activity, my blood flow. I'm going into the sympathetic fight or flight state, which is essentially going to make it so my prefrontal cortex, this logical reasoning thinking machine, is not going to be as effective as it could be because I'm tricking my brain. There's a lion coming after me. I'm in survival mode now. And then people forget what they want to say. They get all sweaty and they start messing things up. But as you said, if I'm walking over and I say, wow, I'm about to walk into a room of people just like me, people who've had their own hardships in life, people who are there because they genuinely want to learn something that I've spent a good amount of time of my life researching and studying and having direct experience of. And I'm just there to have a conversation with them. I'm just there to connect with them, make some new friends. I'm just there to help at least one person learn something they didn't know on the way in. That feels so different. And it's the same experience. There's a room, there's people waiting for you. How are you showing up to that? And so people say, oh, I'm not a good public speaker. There's people who've never spoken who crush it because they don't say that. They don't, it's, if you've spoken to people, you're a speaker. It's just speaking to 1,000 people, speaking to 5 people. There's a difference, but at the same time, the best speakers really just look at one person at a time. They're connecting, they're making their audience feel their heart, feel their presence, Yeah, there's an energy component the bigger the audience gets to be able to handle that. But at the same time, how we're showing up to it is 95% of what the success is going to be based on.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's just so true. And you can apply it to every aspect of your life. And I think that, that in itself, if you just apply that mindset to everything you do, right? I get to do this. I get to, it changes everything, right? It just can, even if you have, what you'd consider to be the worst job in the world, right? Even if you just turn around and say, I get to go to work every day and I get to make this money. It's not the most money in the world, but I get to make this money and I'm happy or whatever. If you just turn it like that, you're going to be at work anyway, right? You're going to, like that public speaking, you're going to be doing that public speaking anyway. So you might as well turn it around, right? And of course, this sounds easy for us to say on this show and people who are living a harder life than us, right? But you get to have that choice. But it's back to what I said, is you get to choose your life, right? So if you have to go to whatever, right? A fast food joint every day and you're flipping burgers and you think that you hate it. But if you'd say, hey, I get to serve people food today, whatever, you can turn it into whatever, right? I'm get to serve people food today. These people are going to enjoy their meal because of me today. I'm going to get, if you turn it like that, holy, doesn't that completely change the experience? It's just absolutely brilliant. I just absolutely love it. But there's some other stuff I want to talk to, because I could talk about that stuff all day. It's really cool. But I'm interested in the nutrition side of stuff as well. Obviously being, a wrestler and, having to pay attention to what I eat for so many years. I'm interested just, without maybe going too long, how you feel about nutrition and kind of what aspects of nutrition that, is very important that a lot of people miss when you work with clients.
Yeah. So I would say that, so your first question, nutrition is very important. And so definitely something that I find a large percentage of the population doesn't typically focus on, and that would really alleviate so much of the chronic disease that we experience in our country and in the world. And so, because I'm speaking in generalities to a big group of people, I can't give any like specifics, but because everyone's different. Yeah. But some things I can say that I think will be helpful for people, because one of the most common questions I might get is, what foods are healthy for me to eat? What should I eat? What diet should I follow? And the thing is, everyone is unique. So there is not one answer there. There's a different diet that's going to be good for you versus anybody else. And some people don't like the word diet, but when I say diet, I just mean like a lifestyle of eating. And so,
I agree that I just want to say that about a diet. I hate when people use the word diet, because diet means you're going to do it for 3 months, you're going to lose the weight or whatever, and then you're just going to go back to normal, right? I hate the word diet because it just depicts the wrong picture. A diet should mean a lifestyle change. You've got to, I always say that. It's like, oh, what diet's the best? Well, it's something, it's not a diet that you do for a month. Okay, if you have a wedding coming up in 2 weeks and you want to lose weight, okay, we need to do something drastic. But really what you need to do is you need to change your lifestyle habits for the rest of your life to have that, to stop calling a diet, because it depicts, that's one of the pet peeves with people. It's so interesting that you said that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's your show. From the place of, like from kind of coming from a medical perspective, if I ask a patient, when I was, I worked in a clinic for a year prior to becoming full-time coaching. And one of my patients, if I were to say, tell me about your diet, I don't mean like talking about the 2-month thing you're working on. I mean, how do you feed yourself? Like, what's going on with that?
Yeah, exactly.
And so in general, for the vast majority of people, listen to your body, or for everybody, listen to your body. When you eat food, that's supposed to energize you. It's not supposed to cause you to crash. If you eat food and you feel lethargic after, if you eat food and there's brain fog, if you eat food and all of a sudden you're bloated, if you eat food and you've got acid reflux, then maybe those foods aren't the right foods for you. Maybe those foods should be avoided. And when I say maybe, I'm being sarcastic. It's like it's your choice, but they're very likely causing problems for you. When you eat a meal like that, for me, that meal I mentioned in the beginning, that salmon, avocado, sweet potato, broccoli, for some people that would bother them because they have food allergies and sensitivities and things of that nature. For me, that meal sits really well, right? So that for me is a healthy meal. But for other people, it's like, oh, is broccoli a healthy food? There's no such thing as healthy food, because some people, broccoli is great, and some people, they have food allergies to it. So for them, broccoli is not healthy, right? So it's really individual. So how do you find out? If you want to get tested, you can have a food allergy panel done. Usually, any physician can order it, but usually it's more either naturopathic physicians or a functional medicine doctor. People more integrative are usually the ones running those type of tests. And you can get an IgG and IgM antibody test, which is what you would ask for. And think of it like it's basically a short-term and a long-term reaction to this food. It's not like a bee sting where if you're allergic to a food, you're allergic to a bee, you get stung, and all of a sudden you have an anaphylaxis and you can barely breathe and you need like the EpiPen. There are foods like that. You can have those type of reactions. People have like peanuts and things like that, for example. But most food allergies, it's subtle. You eat the food and you're constipated for the next 2 days. You eat the food and you don't have as much energy the next day. You eat the food and you're a little bit bloated. Now, if you were eating a perfect diet for you and then you did something like that, it would be obvious. But if you've been living decades eating a diet that's not healthy for you, you don't really notice it because it starts to become normal for you. It becomes whatever is, oh yeah, I'm always bloated. Oh, I never sleep well. I always have low energy. and we don't connect that it's likely what we're eating. And so one recommendation in general is either, work with a healthcare practitioner to get that food allergy panel. IgG, IgM is what you're looking for on that test. Or you listen to your body and you do what's called an elimination diet, which is essentially, let me stop eating certain foods for the next, different people have different definitions of what elimination diets are. It could be a couple weeks, like 3 weeks, or it could be 90 days. But essentially, let's say you gave up most of the food you're eating is processed, and you just ate very simply. Some people might do it like, lamb, rice, and cauliflower or something like that. That's all you eat for like 2 or 3 weeks. And then assuming you never eat that, it's got to be foods that you're not usually eating. But let's say you do something like that and you notice, I haven't tested anything, but I usually have headaches and my headaches went away. And then you start reintroducing food after a couple of weeks and you realize, oh, wow, when I brought eggs back, I started getting headaches again. And then you never realized, perhaps for you, eggs cause headaches because you react to them. But you've been eating eggs every day for the last 30 years and you didn't know that. So you could avoid the elimination side of it just by doing the food allergy panel so you get the actual data, the representation. It's not 100% accurate, but it's definitely good data. But in general, I went a little specific there. In general, pay attention to your body, pay attention to what you're eating, how you feel when you eat it. In general, most people benefit from avoiding the food allergies that are most common, which are dairy and gluten and soy and corn and tree nuts and things of that nature. If you're going to consider cutting something, maybe cut from those 5 and see how you feel and just judge by result. Some people can handle dairy and eggs and things just fine. Some people, though, that's the key to their digestion being messed up and their headaches and their skin conditions and all that kind of stuff. Outside of that, reduce sugar as much as you can, especially as we go into the winter. I'm in New York. I know you're in Vegas or in Nevada, but in New York, as Northeast, as we're getting into the colder months, sugar is going to suppress your immune system, especially with what we have going on with COVID and everything, and the regular flu and everything else that could be going around. You want your immune system to be strong. Sugar is going to not only increase your weight more than likely, but it's going to drive cardiovascular disease, diabetes, immune dysfunction, all that kind of stuff. So reducing sugar as much as you can, eliminating processed food as much as you can. Someone goes, what's processed? If it has a label, it's processed. Essentially it's all you're left with, if you really want to be like true to it, fruits and vegetables, nuts and seeds, meats, beans, legumes, real food, if you want to call it that. Yeah. And if you were to just do that, some people call that extreme, some people call that just normal. And so if you were to eat that way, you probably feel a lot better. Do you have to do that extreme? No, but just do better than you did yesterday. Start making progress in the direction of whatever your goals are, because different people have different goals and that will determine how they should eat. When you were in your wrestling days and you were, let's say, going for muscle and going for size, you eat very differently than if your goal was to run a marathon. Mm-hmm. It's not the same type of routine. Or if someone's more a couch potato, or they don't really work out as much, they don't eat as much food. And there's all these differences where you live. That's why there's a lot of complexities to it. I tried to give some of the more generalities, but if anyone can work with a practitioner to really get a plan tailored in for you, it'd probably be one of the best things you can do for yourself over the next 12 months. Make a commitment. How can I become the healthiest I've ever been over the next 12 months? And that's just in regards to nutrition. There's so many other areas of health that we could tap into, but that's how I would start.
Yeah, I think nutrition is so important. As you pointed out, it's really important, but it just gets negated so much, right? And I don't know why that is. I think it's just an easy thing to just like, okay, nutrition is not that important. I can keep eating like I do. But I think, it's just, as you said, as simple as it is there, I think if you're just paying attention to it to start off with, right? Because most people don't even pay attention to it, right? They don't even pay attention to what they eat, when they eat, how it makes them feel, right? What do certain foods do to them, right? I don't think most people even pay attention to these. It's just, I'm going to eat this food, it tastes good, and that's it, right? And we could have a whole nother episode about why people eat, and that's kind of we would talk about the mindset stuff today. You know, what you talked about there is kind of the mechanics of, right, of eating healthy, but there's a whole mindset behind it as well, I think, right? Like that, you know, people comfort eat and why people eat a certain way and what they tell themselves with that. But I think, you know, you can apply everything we talked today to just nutrition, right? The self-talk we tell ourselves about nutrition, like, oh, this isn't that bad for me. Oh, you know, oh, this has 10% less sugar, or this has blah, 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 all this stuff, right? It can be applied to nutrition as well, because ultimately nutrition is a mindset thing, right? Why do some people eat healthy and some people don't, right? It's the same thing with the same people, right? It's nothing too crazy. It's just that mindset component that people prioritize and make that decision to be the best version of themselves, right? To bring it right back around to that. And they do it through nutrition, and they, you know, it's also very likely that the people who eat healthy, they're successful in other parts of their life as well, I imagine, you know?
Yeah, it goes to, you know, the thing that came to my mind was the Arnold example I mentioned. He's in the gym and he sees himself as Mr. Olympia, and they say, hey, you know, we're all leaving, let's go. And he says, no, like Mr. Olympia goes, you know, 6 or 8 hours. In that same way, you have that future vision for your health. You want to look a certain way, you want to feel a certain way, you know, certain foods don't resonate with you. And so hypothetically, somebody says, if you're not a smoker and somebody goes, hey, you want a cigarette? It doesn't take willpower. It's just, no, I don't smoke. Like, thank you, I appreciate it. You know, enjoy. I don't recommend anyone smoke, but whatever they're gonna do them. But the thing is, in the same way, there you are at a party, and you made a commitment to yourself. This is my vision. I want to be this weight. I want this muscle mass, this body fat percentage. I want to feel this way. I want to avoid this food for the next 3 months, whatever the case may be. And then somebody offers you that food in a party. It's like a buffet, you know, it's not like a pressure situation. You can make it one, but this idea of, oh, thank you, I appreciate it. I'm actually, you know, I gave that up for 3 months. So I'm on a dairy free, or I'm not doing gluten for the next couple months. Or it doesn't need to be a big deal, but we make it a big deal. And it's like, oh, don't, you know, it's, people think it's restrictive. And, you know, from a certain perspective, you know, you're minimizing what you eat. So yeah, it's restrictive, but if it's bothering you, it's amplifying your ability to be healthy for you, you know? And so as long as you feel good in your body, then keep doing you. But if you're having symptoms, if your health isn't where you want it to be, take that ownership and step into that role of a creator if you choose to, and do something about it. Because it's a gift that you give to yourself, because no one can do it for you. And when you do it for yourself, you know, I remember being in med school, and one of our classes, we talked about, well, a lot of people say eating healthy is expensive. And so our task was to find like the cheapest grocery stores we could find, and with those grocery stores, come up with a list for a family of 5 that could feed them at this amount of money a week. And it was really restrictive in terms of the budget we were working with, and absolutely made it work with rice and beans and certain vegetables and certain things that are on. You can live very simply with just real food, and again, it doesn't mean it's healthy if you might be sensitive to it. You got to pay attention to your body and things of that nature, but cost doesn't necessarily have to be a part of it. You know, organic is very likely better, but if you can't afford organic, I'd much rather you eat the non-organic version, but eat real food. Like, that's going to really be where, keep it simple. That's where a lot of the magic's going to be.
Yeah, so true, so true. Well, Jamil, Dr. Jamil, it's been absolutely fascinating talk. I don't know if you could tell, but I was loving every second of that. Honestly, really, so much of that spoke so much to me. And it's just, yeah, you know, we hear so much of this stuff and you kind of forget it sometimes, right? You kind of go away from it. But so much of that stuff that you talked about today is just brilliant. I love how you talked about, who do I need to be that successful, right? Yes, what do I need to do? But who do I need to be as well, right? What kind of person do I need to be that success? And I think that's so huge. That's just unbelievable. If anyone takes anything away from that, who do you need to be that happiness, right? Who do you need to be to reach that level of happiness that you need to be? Who do you need to be to, if you want to find a girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, right? Who do you need to be to attract that? If you want to be a sports star, who do you need to be that sports star, right? You use the Arnold example, and I love that. Who you identify is massive with, right? He identified himself as Mr. Olympia. He was Mr. Olympia. Mr. Olympia won't eat that. Mr. Olympia trains this. Mr. Olympia does that. Does that not change who you are as a person, that, you know, for the better? I think that's unbelievable. And just everything we talked about today was absolutely brilliant. I'm going to go back and watch this 2 or 3 times because it's so good. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it just as much as I do, but honestly, I don't care because I got so much of it. No, I do care. I do care. I'm just kidding. But that was just absolutely brilliant. Before we go, where can people find you and find out more about you?
I appreciate that. And again, this was a pleasure to be a part of this. And thank you so much for the opportunity. I hope people got a lot out of it. And yeah, definitely apply anything that you took from this, however small. It could be one thing, but apply it and your life will start to improve. And then you get that momentum and start applying a little bit more. And you keep doing that, and one thing leads to another, and your life is completely different. And it's amazing. And so if anyone would like to connect with me, you can check out my website, which is jamilsayegh.com, JamilSayegh. You can find me also on social media. There's over 400 videos and blogs and things of that nature that I put out over the years. And on Instagram, it's at Dr.Jamil Sayegh. And Facebook, you can just type in my name and I'll pop up. And if this really spoke to them and they're interested in doing some work together, if they're interested in having a conversation and seeing what we can create in their life, then I'd love to have that conversation with them as well. And that initial hour or so, completely on me, my gift to you. Let's find out where you're at right now in your life. Let's find out what it is you want to create. And let's find out what's blocking you and come up with a plan. And then you leave, and whether we're working together, awesome. And if not, then you go and you crush it on your own. And so however you choose to do it, wish you the best. Really happy that you're here with us today. And thank you so much again.
Thank you. The pleasure was absolutely all mine. Thank you so much, man.